Hello everyone, this is Gabriel Garcia, the Wandering Scribe and Wandering Quill. Before we start today's episode, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone who bought their copy of The Gathering. It means a lot to me. Right now we have almost 8 copies sold thus far. That is huge, that is incredible. I am so excited. People are buying the book. It's incredible. For the start of this first week, it's just amazing that people are buying the book right off the bat. And to celebrate this monumentous occasion, I have decided to read the first 2 chapters of my book, The Gathering, to entice you to buy the book yourself, for those who haven't already. And before I read the story, let's look at the summary. In a faraway land across space and time, the tyrannical sorcerer Kairos rules with an iron fist. His pantheon of warlords enforce his will over the Chronai, who lost all hope long ago. Then one fateful night, the last mage of the Chronai uses a mystical moonstone to summon champions from a distant world. Soon 4 warriors teleport from Earth, each torn from a crucial battle in human history. The stone steals Amidus, a Spartan, as he fights Persian invaders near Plataea in ancient Greece. Decimus, a Roman soldier, is taken while his army falls to Hannibal on the fields of Cannae. The moonstone's power snatches Sinbul, the Celt, from a rebellion in early Roman Britannia. And the Viking siege of Paris loses Thyra, a Norse shield maiden bent on conquest. Now summoned to an alien world, these 4 champions meet others like them, encountering treachery and unlikely allies as they uncover the origins of Kairos. But their unity undergoes the ultimate test when they face the mad tyrant at Castle Olympus. Will these heroes fight together or be lost to the sands of time? And with that, my fellow listeners, let us begin The Gathering. Prologue. The night was cold with bitter winds. The icy breeze awoke the creatures of the night, and they began to emerge from their afternoon slumber. A low howling from a wendigo could be heard throughout the forest, creating an eerie sense of fear. Dark shadows, wild beasts, and the lack of moonlight would make anyone fearful except for one. Clothed in a heavy robe, this individual knew those sounds were the least of his worries. In the moon's twilight, he sprinted through the forest, an ancient, magical leather book tucked under his arms. His legs grew weary, but he reached the forest's heart with sweat dripping off his brow. His heavy robe began to take a toll as he neared his destination. Ducking under the branches and hopping over small streams, the robed stranger sighed as he arrived at his destination, the sacred stones of Olympus. The barking of dogs increased his stress levels, their master sprinting with them, closing in on him. Time was closing its window on him. Falling to his knees, he removed the leather book and sped through the pages. He scanned until he found the right spell, titled Chrono Uxokri, the time spell. He pulled a red gemstone out from his cloak and placed it in the center. With palms together, he recited the incantation in his people's ancient tongue. As he spoke, the stones began to turn blue and glow with intense brightness and clarity. In the center of the rocks, the ringed outline began to swirl until a portal between time and space tore open. Through the portal, images of battles became visible. He could see everything and needed to choose quickly. Making his decision, he began to recite the final phrase. However, his phrase was interrupted by his pursuers, who had arrived at the worst possible moment. The dogs were panting hard, with drool dripping from their muzzles. Their razor-sharp teeth gleamed in the moonlight, and their eyes glinted red. The pursuers were his people, and were accompanied by one of the pantheons, Ares, the war god and lord of the pantheon. Ares wore black armor adorned with a shredded cape on the back. He stood around 8 feet tall with a muscular build. His arms were the size of tree trunks, legs firm as stone, and eyes as bright as the sun. He had a massive beard with dried blood on it. Unsheathing his Xiphos sword, a mere reflection of the double-edged straight sword from the Hellenistic age, he pointed it at his quarry. His voice was full of malice and rage. "You gave us quite the chase, mage, but now it ends here. Surrender, and I will give you a quick death," spoke the war god. The mage remained motionless and continued with the chant. That was a big mistake, because Ares did not like being ignored. He gestured to 2 of his fellow soldiers to apprehend the mage. As the 2 got close, they immediately incinerated. A protection spell was put by the mage around the stones. It may have worked on regular soldiers, but would do little to Ares. "If you want something done right, do it yourself." Ares began to walk towards the barrier. Knowing what would happen, the individual tried to finish the last phrase of the chant. His heart pounded in his chest as he heard the sound of the barrier breaking underneath Ares' strength. Fear filled his mind, but he could not afford to make a mistake. Not now. Knowing the barrier would shatter soon, the mage finished the last part of the spell, and the portal exploded into the starlit sky, then disappeared. It left a bluish hue in the night sky, and he breathed a sigh of relief. He hoped the portal reached its destination, planet Earth. Before Ares could get to him, he grabbed the stone and teleported it away. Enraged, Ares grabbed the sorcerer by the neck and slammed him to the ground. The force shattered the stone floor, breaking the sacred site. The sheer power of the slam crushed several of the sorcerer's ribs, and red liquid peeled from the corner of his mouth. Ares placed his blade on the sorcerer's neck and drew some blood. "You think you figured it out, but how long will you keep calling your champions for help?" Ares then began to mock the sorcerer. "I thought you and your people would have learned your lesson by now. I mean, all those deaths were your fault. Have you nothing to say?" The man spat at Ares' face as his response. Smirking, Ares picked up the sorcerer and threw him over his shoulder. Licking the blood off his sword, Ares looked up at the night sky. He saw a figure towering above him. The figure was the only one, Zeus, his underling, and Lord of the skies. "I take it you know what just happened," said the thunder god. "I'm sick of picking off warbands across this forsaken region. Let me kill some earthlings for a change. It'll be like the old days, back in the Great Purge." In his twisted way, Ares was delighted. He had not killed humans for some time now. And the stone? Zeus saw that neither the mage nor his lord Ares possessed the stone. "The sorcerer knows where it is and probably hid it back at his village. Take him back to the castle and imprison him until further notice. While you're there, send a scouting party and have them search the outlands until they find the stone," ordered Ares. Handing the body to Zeus, the thunder god zipped away into the night, turning his back to the sacred stones. Ares wondered what new warriors he and the others would face. He chuckled at the idea of champions putting up a fight and believing they would win. They will die like all the rest. Nothing will change. Chapter 1. Platea, for 79 BC. Today was going to mark the end. Years of fighting, countless men lost, the massacre at Thermopylae, and Athens burning had led to this. Here celebrated the final engagement of the Persian invaders and the Greek warriors at the town of Plataea. The combined forces of Sparta and Athens created a coalition force to match their Persian counterpart. The Greeks had to win this battle. The Persians lost their entire navy a year earlier and are now stranded on land. However, this was the same Persian army that fought against the Spartan king Leonidas not too long ago. The alliance made their camp outside the walls of the small town and waited for the enemy. They knew the Persians were close, but the generals did not know where. Hours passed until the Greek commanding officer Pausanias, nephew of the fallen king Leonidas, received a report from one of his scouts. "What news have you brought?" asked Pausanias. The scout had to catch his breath before replying. "Commander, the Persian army is less than a mile from us. They will advance come morning," replied the scout. Pausanias seemed intrigued by this news. "Who is commanding the army?" "Mardonius, sir. He is in command of what remains of the Persians, infantry, cavalry, and the army's deadliest unit, the Immortals, who were responsible for the death of the 300 Spartans." Pausanias smiled upon hearing the report. Their enemy was less than a mile from camp. The Spartan had a gleam in his eyes, eager for the battle ahead. He grabbed a cup of wine and gave it to the young Greek. "Thank you, boy. Now spread the word to others. I know they are itching for a fight." The young Greek gulped the wine and bowed before leaving the tent to spread the word. Alone again, Pausanias looked at the night sky and spoke, almost whispering to the spirits of the fallen. He poured himself another cup of wine and raised his glass high. "This is for you, all the Greeks who have died. You will be avenged soon." The scout went from campfire to campfire throughout the night, reporting his news to every Greek soldier. When he arrived at the Spartan camp, encased in bronze, a handsome youth greeted the scout. To his peers, Amminus was his name. To his fellow brothers, he was an Archodaki, or Little Bear. Amminus had curly brown hair like his father, and amber eyes like his mother. Physically strong and in good health, Sparta deemed him the youngest soldier to serve on account of his boyish face. In truth, he was 20 winters, and by right, a man. Like all Spartan children, he trained in the Agoge, a lifelong boot camp that taught young Spartan boys to become Spartan men. When his mother enlisted him at 7, his teachers baptized him in the art of war. In the Agoge, he learned how to fend for himself. One winter at 11, he was tasked to live in the wild at winter's height. The cold air stung his face and turned an icy blue, but he did not recognize the pain. One cold night, as he gathered firewood, he found his home taken by a lone bear. Not as large as those found in the valley, but still posed a challenge to the young Spartans. Armed with only a wooden spear, he approached the intruder. The bear recognized the threat and let out a low growl. The sound meant nothing to the young Spartan. Then, the bear exited the cave and faced the young boy head on. The two predators circled each other, studying and evaluating. Both thought of who would make the first move. Amminus lunged forward, jabbing his spear at the bear. The spear pierced the bear's skin, but not enough to kill it, but enough to make him mad. The bear then swiped the spear away from the boy and raised a paw high in the air. In one slash, the claws dug deep into the boy's chest. Blood oozed everywhere. Despite the pain, it only seemed to fuel Amminus more. Letting out a blood-curdling scream, he charged at the beast in a blind fury. He tackled the bear to the ground and proceeded to strangle his adversary. The bear squirmed, freed one of its paws, and slapped the young Spartan off him. The blow stunned Amminus, but he recovered quickly as the bear was on to him. His mouth gaped open. The young Spartan held the bear back. Amminus could smell the stench coming from the bear's mouth. Hot drool dripped onto his face. Still fueled by his bloodlust, Amminus grabbed the bear's upper and lower jaw and opened his mouth further. The pain angered the bear and reared onto its hind legs and enveloped the human in a tight hug. Amminus could feel his body ache, but could not afford to lose, struggling to free his arms. He heard his bones begin to break. Pushing through the pain, he managed to free his arms. Grabbing the bear's mouth, Amminus opened the bear's mouth even further. He could hear the slight sound of the bone breaking and the gums tearing. Then with last out of strength, he broke the bear's jaw and killed it. The creature slumped to the ground, with Amminus falling on top of it. The young Spartan returned many days later, wearing the bear's skin as his cape and trophy. From then on, he was known as Arlukaki, the little bear, a name that matched his inner beast. From then on, Amminus earned a reputation of being one of his age's most dangerous Spartans. He bested his friends and brothers-in-arms in combat during the summer, gaining the eye of the elite. He would then challenge much older Spartans to test his might. In some instances, he earned a beating, but in others, he delivered them. By the time he was 19, the Agoge had transformed him into a 6-foot living demigod. Despite his training and gaining the respect of his elders, he did not partake in the 300 battle, which angered the boy. Upon hearing the aftermath at the hot gates, he found his opportunity. He then received his Spartan armor made entirely of bronze. Though rather heavy for him, it was as light as air. On his back was a light spear made of sturdy oak and tipped with an iron spearhead. His helmet and shield belonged to his father, as there were signs of battle damage on both. He received it upon hearing his death at the Battle of Thermopylae. In the present, Amminus looked at the young scout, who was no older than him. The Spartan spoke in a deep voice that made the scout flinch. "What news have you brought?" The scout stuttered a bit. This was his first time meeting a Spartan up close. Gathering his thoughts, the scout gave the reply. "The Persians are close. They will be here at dawn. Make sure your Spartans are ready." "Thank you for the information. Report back to your commanders at once," said the Spartan calmly. The scout bowed and ran back to camp. The Spartan looked to his left, admiring the vast open land. To think that the Greeks' enemy, who seemed far away, was closer than they thought. His anger for the Persians burned inside him. His father died, along with many others, at the Thermopylae Pass. He wanted retribution, and he would have it soon. Amminus then turned around and headed back to his commander's tent. Walking through the camp, he passed his fellow Spartans, boys he fought and trained with at a young age. Every man in this army was a brother, and they protected their own. All of them had lost family to the Persians. He knew that when the battle commenced, no quarter would be given. He knew. Arriving at the commander's tent, he was stopped by 2 elite Spartan polemarchs, those chosen to be the commanding general's guards. "State your name," asked one of the guards. Amminus removed his helmet. "My name is Amminus Baru, and I have information for the general. It's important." "Let him through," said a voice inside the tent. The 2 guards allowed Amminus to pass. As he entered, he bowed before his commander and the officers. Setting his helmet on the table, the young Spartan relayed the information he had received and presented written verification to his commanding Spartan general, Amonfredus. The older Spartan unraveled the parchment and read it thoroughly. Amonfredus passed the news to his officers, and they began to read it. After a brief silence, one of the Spartans looked up. "Is this accurate?" inquired the Spartan. "Yes, it is, sir," said Amminus. "They'll be here at dawn." Amonfredus smiled with satisfaction. Finally, the Spartans would avenge their fallen king and brothers at the Thermopylae Pass. He turned his attention to Amminus and patted him on the shoulder, showing his appreciation. This news pleases me, Amminus. Tomorrow we will avenge our fallen comrades and bathe the ground with Persian blood. Tomorrow we will end this war once and for all. I look forward to it, sir, Amminus said with pride. After his father's death, Amminus quickly joined the army. He could not think of a better way to begin his military career than being a part of this coalition. Grabbing his helmet, he placed it back on and left the tent. Amonfredus turned his attention back to his two officers and gave them new orders. Tell every man to be ready tomorrow. Have them get their weapons sharpened and their shields polished, along with their helmets. No drinking tonight, understood? I want every man sober tomorrow and in fighting strength. Now go! The two officers nodded and left the tent. Back with Amminus, he was at his tent on the east side of camp. As he entered his tent, he set aside his shield and helmet as he lay on his bed. Unfortunately, he could not fall asleep. The thought of tomorrow's battle was all he could think about. His training had led him to this moment. Now it was here. Letting his mind rest for tomorrow, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. The following day, he and the rest of the army readied for battle. Some of the men washed, others put their armor on. Helmets, shields, body armor, spears, and swords were polished and ready for battle. Amonfredus was at the head of the army, wearing his favorite red cape into battle. Its red color cast a shadow that blanketed the army. He ordered the military to march in close formation with his officers behind him. Huddled together, the Spartans left their camp and joined the rest of the coalition. As the army marched across the grassy field, one Spartan officer saw the Persians' faint outline across from them. Amonfredus halted the Spartans several yards away from their enemy. In clear view, they saw their hated foe. Amminus breathed heavily and tightened his grip on his shield and spear. His palms were sweaty, and his breathing grew rapid. Trained to the peak of the human condition, the young warrior could feel a cold shiver of fear run down his spine. One Spartan to his left nudged him out of his trance. "Quit worrying so much. It will get us killed." The older Spartan was right. Fear in the ranks would doom everyone. Taking a moment to calm himself, Amminus hardened his gaze at the Persians. No one dared to say anything. The Spartans prepared themselves for the enemy. Suddenly, the Persian cavalry began to charge only several yards away. Not too far behind, Mardonius and his immortals followed. Amonfredus then gave the order for a shield wall or phalanx. The phalanx was a shield wall of 8 rows of men in tight formation. It offered the best protection against archers, light infantry, and cavalry. The men tightened their formation and leaned forward with shields in front to protect and their spears poised ahead to thrust. With the enemy rushing towards them, Amonfredus counterattacked. Full of battle fury and rage, the Spartans charged the enemy. The sounds of boots and horses' hooves thundered across the grassy plains. The chants from both the Spartans and the Persian forces filled the skies. Time seemed to stop as the two armies closed the distance between them. No noise, birds, horses, or even the sounds of men prepared for battle. In that split moment, there was nothing. Suddenly shields crashed into each other, spears piercing armor and flesh, and dying men screamed as they continued to fight on. Amminus heard all of this. He and a few other Spartans broke formation with the Persian defenses crumbled. "No prisoners! No mercy!" Amminus shouted at the top of his lungs. In his fury, he launched himself at a group of Persian mortals. Bloodlust consumed him as he began to attack the Persian enemies. The young Spartan's attacks were a mix of ferocity and skill. He bashed one enemy soldier with his shield and stabbed him in the heart with the tip of his spear. Blood oozed out of the soldier's chest as he weakly tried to remove the spear. Amminus ripped the spear out and continued to fight. The carnage ensued for hours as more Persians began to lay the field. More and more were being held together and slowly killed by the Spartan army. Today was the day when Persia died. Amminus' helmet and shield were covered in blood as he continued to hack down more Persians. He then kicked a soldier and raised his sword to finish him. However, before he delivered the blow, he heard the sound of thunder come over him. As he looked up into the sky, he saw dark clouds approaching. Something told him to worry. This is no ordinary storm. The clouds appeared darker than usual. Both sides stopped fighting as they looked up into the sky. Suddenly, streaks of blue lightning fell upon the soldiers. Persians and Greeks alike were incinerated by the flash. charged to a crisp. Only their weapons remained. Chaos took the field as soldiers tried to run from the lightning. Amyntas tried to flee, but the Spartan was struck with such force and power unlike anything before, and a loud crack consumed him. The lightning engulfed the Spartan, scorched the earth around him. However, the lightning did not incinerate him instantly. Instead, he felt himself being torn apart piece by piece. He screamed in agony as the pain was unbearable. Then the lightning disappeared. The only part of Amyntas left at Plataea was the scorched earth where he once stood. And with that, listeners, I will leave that here. Now, if you want to read the full story and find out what happens to Amyntas, then please go to my previous video and click on the link below to buy your copy of The Gathering. And once you do, I think it would be pretty cool if you could send a picture of the book that you bought to me so I can use that for marketing to help sell The Gathering. I also think it would be pretty cool to also have to my collection to see how many people have enjoyed reading this book. And also, most importantly, please leave reviews of the book on my Barnes & Noble page. Please be critical, but also be honest too. Tell me what you liked about this book. Tell me what you thought was lacking in the book. Be honest, but be critical. I really want this book to do well. And again, I thank those who have already bought their copies. And again, I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I'm so excited that The Gathering is now published. And I hope you all enjoy. This is The Wandering Scribe, signing out.